So yeah, I have a newsletter called Notes to an Entrepreneur. And it's these really fun stories of typically famous entrepreneurs, but not always famous, uh, at that moment when they figured something really great out, right? Before they became famous. And so what was that little magic trick that they figured out that took them to the next level? So that's what these stories are. They're fun stories like that. And sometimes they are that reverse reveal, like, and now you know the rest of the
The rest of
story.
the story. That's right. So today
Yeah.
we're going to talk about maybe some of your favorites, and maybe some insights that you've gleaned either from your own experience, which is, it's a pretty twisty road. Mine too.
So
uh,
I started out as an attorney, as you mentioned. Um, I got a big job in the big city, at the big firm, and I was miserable, big time unhappy. Um, so and it was because of management, because I just had the world's worst boss
oh,
at
it
that
can
law
kill
firm.
you. A bad
Right,
boss makes it awful. Bad leadership
it,
makes it awful.
bad leadership makes it awful, and that's one of the reasons I've like focused it on leadership in my career. Like, what makes a great leader? What makes a great entrepreneur? What do they do differently that other ones don't do? And I had a very early taste of it in that job where one boss threatened to put his cigarette out in my forehead,
Oh my
and
goodness. That's going to
but this is
be,
right before I became this is before I became a lawyer. Because had that happened when I was a lawyer,
you
I
would have
would have
been like,
retired.
go ahead,
Yeah.
please. I'd like the,
Oh yeah.
I like the
Okay. I think
damages on that one.
I get to sue you now. But I was still a young 20 something when that happened. And then I got the law firm job. I got another terrible lawyer. It's one of the reasons I never ended up working in a big management company, big business, big law firm, because I am an entrepreneur, right? I like being the boss. I like making the decisions. I don't take direction well, and I was a terrible employee, to be perfectly frank.
And so obviously you had the bad boss. What made you decide to go out on your own versus get another bad boss or potentially get another bad boss? Because they're not all bad bosses.
I got fired.
Okay. Eh, Hey,
You
sometimes that's what you need.
Oh, no, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, you know, um, because I really even when I was in law school, I took a class on how do you start your own law firm? Like, that had been in the back of my mind. And so I did the big city thing and the big firm thing for several years and did the bad boss thing for several years. And when I got fired, it was an opportunity for me to start my own business. And fortunately, I have a lovely wife, and I was happy. That's my
That's when you know you got
my
fired for the right
my
reasons.
handy dandy test of whether you're an entrepreneur or not. You lose the job, you lose the benefits, you lose the check every 2 weeks, and you're happy, right? And that was my case. So I was fortunate enough to have a friend who believed in me. She lent me a little bit of money, and I went off and rented an office and made a profit my very first month, and grew it into a nice. My first business was a law firm, and it was very successful. It went great. So that's how I did it. I just decided I needed to be the boss and not have a boss.
Hmm. And so you've been talking to entrepreneurs for a long time now.
Yeah.
So, and your interest is like what makes a great leader. And so what have been your insights?
Well, it's interesting. So I ended up becoming the small business columnist for USA Today, which
Mm.
is something I did for 20 years. So I got to meet all these incredible entrepreneurs. I do this for Inc. now, for Inc. magazine. I do say the same thing. Well, they definitely have certain things in common. I mean, to be a great entrepreneur, not everybody is meant to be an entrepreneur, right? Some people are athletes, and some people are artists, and some people are great employees, and some people are entrepreneurs, right? And you got to know your lane. And if you're not meant to be an entrepreneur, and if you're actually better taking direction and fulfilling someone else's mission and doing it competently and rising that way, well, everybody needs great employees, right?
Everybody does. Yep.
Right. So that there's nothing wrong with that. It's just my world is a different world. It is the person who's willing to take a risk. When I was a young boy, my dad was an entrepreneur. He owned one carpet store, and he turned it into the largest chain of carpet stores in Southern California at the time. Um, and I had to write a story once about what my dad did for a living. And so what do you do, Dad? He goes, well, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm like, entrepreneur, what? What is that? I never heard. It wasn't an era where that word is bandied about like it is today.
Right.
And he said, an entrepreneur is a person willing to take a risk with money to make money. Okay, a person willing to take a risk with money to make money. So risk is part of the equation if you're going to do this kind of world, and you got to be comfortable with that risk, and you got to be comfortable with uncertainty. I think that's one of the things that differentiates an entrepreneur and an owner versus an employee and someone in management. Boy, there's this willingness, and I'd love to get your perspective on this, of risk taking and uncertainty. Is that marketing idea going to work? Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I've never done it before. If I bring this guy in or this woman in as a partner, is this a good idea, a bad idea? Will it be a great investor? It's all kind of calculated risks along the way. And I think that's a big difference.
For sure. I think that there are definitely differences in how people handle uncertainty. Like that's our book, is the Uncertainty Playbook. So we look at
Right.
the impact of uncertainty in decision making and just, management tools around uncertainty. So I think you can learn to be better at it, but there do seem to be people who not only have developed themselves as best they can to deal with uncertainty, because to some degree, uncertainty throws everybody off. I mean, like, there are really subtle ways in which uncertainty dictates your behavior that like nobody's paying attention to. Like, to some degree, how personally unstable you are determines probably the groups that you choose to belong to and how strongly you commit to them. And nobody actually understands that. Like, they don't realize that that's what's happening. But that's like, not to get into a whole religious conversation, but like, if you have personal instability and part of that is like a concern for what happens next, right? Like, that's the greatest, most fundamental uncertainty there is. And there's a religious organization offering you answers to that, then they have a real advantage in attracting people who like really bond, because like the people who are like kind of the most unstable or uncertain about that, well, they wind up like really connecting to that organization. And it's really remarkable when that happens, because like your identity, which that's what, when you connect, you're forming an identity around a group. Your identity actually filters information according to your identities, but certainly like your most salient identity. So
Yeah.
in any case, like, yes, you can get better with uncertainty. Yes, there are tools to get better, but there are also a lot of things in people's lives that may make them more or less susceptible to the sensitivities of uncertainty. The degree to which, you kind of have stable relationships and like the other pieces of your life aren't unstable, you probably then have more of a capacity to take some risks on the professional side. Or like I have a origin story with my great grandfather. Like, he came here, he came directly from Italy, and it was an era where signs were everywhere: Irish and Italian need not apply. And we're Italian, or like, I'm partially Italian because this is, my great grandfather. And so he had no choice, right? Like, the certainty was there. He wasn't going to get hired. So
Right.
it doesn't matter how much uncertainty you're feeling, buddy, you're
Yeah.
going, you're opening up whatever you know how to do. And it happened to be a fruit stand that turned into a grocery store that turned into a beverage company, so, and set the path for a family. So I think there's that's going on. And then in your story, like my story, there really is an advantage to having people whom you're very close to who have done something similar. So like, we get a lot of people's origin stories for like their careers, and they either had somebody who was sick, or has a doctor in the family or a nurse, and that path is clear, and so it's less uncertain, and so they follow that path. And hey, I grew up, I'm fourth generation entrepreneur. I'm sure that it was less scary for me. I'm sure it was less scary for you, because like, we grew up in an environment where like it was just intuitive. It's the air that you breathe.